G'day, mate. How you going?
I'm still sounding like Barry White.
You're sounding good and you're looking good, though, Mark. You're looking good. That's all I should say. You're looking good. So, fella, what are we going to have a little discussion about today?
Well, we previously talked about the fact how did we get to be in the Navy? And we got down to HMS Raleigh, which I know you didn't care for and I was glad to leave. But we should really talk about our time at Raleigh and possibly, if we can, at the next one, because it was a long training for us. Was it 6 weeks at Raleigh?
6 weeks at Raleigh.
And then about a year or so at HMS Mercury.
Yeah, it's like 9 months or something, wasn't it, in total?
What do you remember of, say, the first 4 or 5 weeks at HMS Raleigh?
I think I mentioned last time it was certain aspects of if your kit doesn't fit, chuck it in the left-hand side of your locker. The fact that nothing actually managed to fit me, all of my measurements were wrong, so I had no kit that I could wear that wasn't hanging around my ankles type of thing. It was silly little things like getting my hair cut and my head all shaved off, having to then move along the row like on a little conveyor belt, and then having a jumper thrown over my head and a photograph taken that go into the passport photo. And it won't surprise you that I do still have the old passport with the old passport photograph in it. So, and then just some of the way that the shock to the system really is to the way that I was treated and the way that people behaved around me, and some of the things that we were then exposed to in terms of lectures and medical advice and all of those sorts of things. And then just being licked into shape on the assault courses, on the parade ground, in the general learning how to become a useful member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces.
Or not.
Or not, as the case may be, yes.
I agree with you. I remember, I didn't remember the time, I didn't think about it, but looking back, it was this transition period, wasn't it? From being a civilian to a non-civilian, and they literally break you and remold you. You mentioned the previous episode about the frog being boiled alive. It doesn't realise it's being boiled alive if you just, crank up the heat slightly. Well, this wasn't like that. This was full on from day one, but you don't notice the change, I think, until you go home, perhaps on leave, and you realise that you've altered and people around you haven't.
That's absolutely right. When I was at Raleigh, we had a break in mid-training for the summer holiday. So I actually went home within that 6-week period for about 2 weeks, I think it was, for summer leave. And when I got back, I'd only been away for 4 weeks or something like that. And I had changed so much by comparison to my school friends who were still at school going to do their thing. And I had now been in the forces for 4 weeks, and I was now a working man, and I was in the military and blah, blah, blah. And I felt so different. I felt so grown up by comparison to them. Hugely grown up.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? Well, I was longer because I don't think I got home until, now, and I can't remember this. You'll go to your diary and let me know this. When we When we passed out, did we get leave? Because the parents had come down at the end of this 6 weeks. Did we go away with them?
No, well, I don't know if you did. So sometimes they worked out passing out parades so that your passing out parade would then coincide with a 2-week period of leave or something like that. My intake, we had our summer leave right smack bang in the middle of our training period. And then when we passed out from Raleigh, passed out on the Friday, parents came down, did all of that stuff, spent the day with them. Then we had on the Saturday, we then got on the coach and went across to HMS Mercury and straight into, because the next period of leave was Christmas.
Yeah, I don't remember leave, so I think I probably went straight to Mercury, apart from we stayed behind 10 days parked because we was waiting for transport or something. The one thing I remember of the first 2 weeks, you kept in this block, aren't you? You're taken out occasionally. I don't know if I came from a very coddled background, but I was very quiet. And it obviously caught the attention of the authorities because I had to go and see a shrink. It was a psychologist, female, doctor who...
Oh, yeah, I did that as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Perhaps we all did then.
Yeah, you sit down. It was a Wren officer who sat down and talked me through what I thought, why I thought it, and what I wanted to be, and where I wanted to go, and how I was feeling.
You're a saviour. I thought it was me.
Well, maybe it was just us, mate. Maybe it's just you and I. Who knows? But yeah, I had to go and see one as well.
I was under the impression they thought, why are you so quiet? That was the one thing I remember. And also the massive prank that my intake did on one person. Luckily, it wasn't me. So you know that you go out, you come back to the barracks, it's this big open space, all these beds lined up. And it was big. I think there was about 30, 40 people in one room.
So about 40 odd people in there, wouldn't there?
Yeah. And you're knackered.
Yeah.
And one guy fell asleep. It was about 7 o'clock at night. And one little guy, I can remember his name, I won't name him. He said, let's do a prank on him. We'll all make out we've just got up, it's the next morning, and see if he rushes off to get changed. And we did. Woke him up, he was shocked. He said, you're going to be late, you're going to be late. And he rushed off to the showers, got washed and blah, blah, blah. When he came back, we were all in bed. And he was absolutely shocked. And I don't think he found it that funny, but poor lad.
No, there was some very odd little tricks like that were played on people, wasn't there? Very odd little tricks. Yeah. No, it was good. It was an interesting time.
Do you remember where you had to go with the water leak? The mock-up of the ship that was holed, and you had to stop a water leak coming in.
Yeah, the damage control, wasn't it? Damage control. I think that's what they called it, wasn't it? Damage control.
Yeah.
And you had to put out fires and go down through. I think I had singed all my eyebrows off with having to go down through the heat layer that sort of was set. There's some quite interesting stuff that you used to do, which probably today they wouldn't allow you to do it. They would say, no, that's far too risky and people will get burnt and hurt and all the rest of it. I mean, I saw loads of guys that came out with huge burns on them from the Fear Naught suits not working properly and all of your eyebrows singed off. And then there were those folk with the respirators when you'd go in and do the gas testing and they'd lob in the tear gas, CS gas. Yeah. And away you'd go and you'd then take your mask off and count to 10 and do all of that sort of stuff, put your mask back on. And I used to think, what is the point of that? If there's gas floating around, mate, I'm not going to be taking this mask off. But the whole idea was just to show you how much it hurts and so that they could all laugh at you.
And it does.
Your eyes are streaming.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And then itchy all around the neck.
I had to do my official number, D188. I'm not going to give all of it. D188. And I couldn't finish it. I was just...
I guess by today's standards, it was different. And by the standards of 1940 and by the standards of 1917, it was probably totally weak. So I think we've just become softer and softer, perhaps, as we've gone on.
Do you remember you had to go into the swimming pool in your overalls and your steaming badge, and you had to wade water, and you had to do it for a certain amount of time, and if you were seen to try and get to the side, they had big poles pushing you away?
I can remember this is not quite about naval training, but it's about some other training that I did later on in life, and part of what I was being taught to do was to do river crossings at night whilst not being detected and all of this silly nonsense. And the people that were training me said, right, okay, this is what you have to do. And it was in January and it was in a very cold place. And so it was winter. We went down to the riverbank and the instructor says, look, health and safety, you guys aren't going to be able to do this, but we'll show you how to do it. And so we stood there laughing our proverbials off as these guys get in the water and with their bergens, their rucksacks and all the rest of it, and they do this river crossing, show us how to exit and do all that sort of stuff. And then they're stood at the other end of the banks, whoa, freezing, and we're going, oh, you sucker, type thing. And until, of course, we then go out at midnight to do our patrol out and do what we're doing. And we get to a river and the directing staff says, okay, guys, you need to get to the other side. And so we just look at him and go, but there's a river. He went, yeah. He said, but we can't go in the river because of health and safety. And he went, get in the river. And so we had to do it at midnight in January. And you thought to yourself, yeah, okay, fair enough. So that was a little bit different, a little bit further on in life with other work. But going back to the naval training, it was quite interesting with the way that they used to get you up in the morning, the way that you'd have to turn to, get up, everything was clockwork, wasn't it?
I remember going to Jupiter Point at Raleigh, and it's like an expedition. You go out there and they get you in a boat and you're going up and down the Hormuz. I mean, the tide, you realise how quickly that tide goes down that river. And there was an old ship in the Hormuz. It was an old Rothsay class frigate, empty. No one were there. It was just black. And we were allowed to go on and go down a few hatches and have a look. And it was so scary. It was like it's a ghost ship. It was like a movie. I think it'd been decommissioned and it was about to be scrapped and it was just laying there. And I remember that. and then having, for the first time, a teriyaki, a pasty
Yeah.
at Jupiter Point with a mug of tea. I must have had one as a kid, but I don't remember. But I remember having that one. It was fucking huge.
Good old Oggies. Good old
Yeah.
Oggies. Yeah.
Stand easy, or Zambezi as we used to call it.
Zambezi, stand easies. And pier cellars. Did you do pier cellars?
Yeah, and it would have been late October, freezing cold. You'll have to explain it.
Well, it was. I'm trying to remember it. I've got such a vague recollection of it. I can remember the name, and it was a camp that we went to. This is as I remember it. It was a camp that we went out to on like an exped.
Yes, down near Corsans. It was like a little inlet, like a little square where they created sea walls around it, and then they would string a rope across, and you had to go across it.
I've got such a vague recollection of it, but I can remember it, but I can't remember the detail of it. The name of it,
you would fall into the water.
Yeah, the name of it sticks in my head. So there's clearly it's probably one of those experiences that I've compartmentalized away and I've closed the door on. So
you fell in.
There's this little tiny flag up there to say pier cellars, pier cellars, pier cellars. Don't open this.
Don't go there. That's right.
But yeah, going back to Raleigh then. Raleigh was where we did our basic training, and it was where we learnt the sort of general art of being good upright citizens of Her Majesty's Armed Forces. And then we moved on from there, didn't we? And went down to Mercury to do our signals training. So I passed out on the Friday, went to Mercury on the Saturday, and the impression, as I say, was Raleigh back in the day was quite a modern block. It was quite a modern establishment. And Mercury was Second World War, camp split in two by a main road, Nissan huts on one side, old, probably 1940s accommodation, brick-built 1940s accommodation on the other side in a crescent, and with various blocks along it. And you were plonked into one of those blocks, Blake, Pascoe, Cunningham, Howe?
I think so. I can't remember.
I think there's about 5 of those blocks anyway, and you were plonked into one of those, and that was your life then for the next sort of 9 months, I guess, something like that.
Getting there was a bit of a jaunt. It was sited at a place called East Meon in Hampshire, which is 10-15 miles north of Portsmouth. A beautiful countryside, lots of woods around it. But I can never get over that the CTs did their training there. How would you describe the CTs? Are you allowed to describe the CTs, Steve? Can we say?
Comms technicians. They were our linguists, weren't they?
That's right. They would listen in to radio. Well, despite the fact that they were of high security and therefore on the campus, a main road went through the whole lot. You couldn't stop anybody. They would just literally drive past all the time.
Yeah, it's quite funny. There's quite a few what I would call sensitive military establishments where you can actually do that in the UK. And if you knew what they were, you'd be thinking, flipping heck, this is a bit weird. But there are quite a few that if you drive past, you know.
Yeah.
And do you remember the lockerman, being on duty as a lockerman?
No.
So the lockerman was the guy that you had the duty as a lockerman. You would have done this where you were lockerman, which meant you had to get up before everybody else. And this was particularly at HMS Mercury. You had to ensure that every block along that road was opened up, lights were on, every mess was opened up so that the lads could get up. Because it was all fellas, wasn't it? There was no women on that side of the road. The Wrens had their own block further down the other side of the camp.
Oh, well, I have a Gandalf with that. I have no memory of this place.
Don't you?
No, I don't remember that at all. But then again, there's so much I've forgotten over the years. I don't have a diary like you see.
No, that's right. And I do have a diary, and it is there. Lockerman duties. Lockerman duties. But of course, Mercury's all gone now.
Yeah. It really was a big house where they built a camp around it, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. So it was the Ladine House, is that what it was called? Ladine House?
It's fantastic.
It was the big wardroom, wasn't it? It's where the officers were. Beautiful staircase.
I went in once. I had to do, there was a meal for the officers and I had to be in the kitchen clearing up, blah, blah, blah. You know, the lowest of the low doing the cleaning of the dishes.
I have been there myself, my friend, yeah.
And the parade ground was in front. Now, I remember the parade ground for one fact. Princess Diana came down in attendance. There's pictures of it. And they played I'm Getting Married in the Morning.
Right.
She was due to get married to Prince Charles. I remember that.
Ah, nice. Yeah, I don't know that we had anybody when I was there that was of significance that came and saw us. Maybe we did. I don't remember. But I used to hate it. That was going out on divisions, wasn't it? You'd have divisions on a Monday or on a Friday. And I used to hate it. Standing there to attention, being inspected, being cold. And you think, oh, hurry up, let's get this thing over with. I just want to go back to the naffy and have a cup of tea. Something like that.
One thing about divisions, it's the only thing I remember apart from that big ceremony, was for some reason, now you got to remember, I was there in 1980 into 81, and I was 16, and occasionally you get days off over the weekend, and they used to have a disco where people would come up, civilians come out to the camp, and of course it's your only opportunity to blow off steam unless you went off some distance. Well, two I don't know whether to admit this. You probably did this as well. Me and a couple of mates, because we'd been learning Morse code, would sit at a table with some girls and we would be winking Morse code, don't fancy yours much, something like that. These young women, must have seen us thinking, there's something wrong with these guys. Eyes twitching and all that. I remember that was hilarious. And I dyed my hair green.
Any particular reason, or just...
I think because I could. I was on weekend pass or something. But it wouldn't come out. So I had the parade on the Monday, and I was literally desperate to try and get this green out the hair. And I went on to parade, and I had to borrow another guy's hat. It was bigger, so it would hide as much hair as possible. Somehow I got away with it. They never twigged on. But this stuff was almost like, well, by then it was yellowish. They probably thought I was a blonde. I don't know.
Learn some of the way that they set things up. So when we obviously got to signals training, and you're having to then look at things like voice procedure, message prep, and Morse code and typing and all of that type of thing. How you used to learn the Morse. So I'm presuming that they would have done exactly the same with you. You'd first learn with EISHTMO. Dit, 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 da, 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 EISHTMO. And you would practice that, and you'd get that off pat, and then they'd introduce another like AUV or something like that.
That's right, and typing as well.
Always following a pattern. I still find myself now, which is quite strange, converting number plates into Morse code as I drive along. So even as I sit here now, I'm looking at a number plate on my vehicle, and I can convert it into Morse code. And as I drive along, I quite often convert stuff into Morse still, which is a bit weird, isn't it?
I've forgotten quite a few letters.
Yeah.
I often get V and W mixed up for some reason.
But you were really good, from what I remember, mate, when we served together. You were really good with Morse. You were a bit of a dab hand on the old 15-inch flashing light, mate. You were there.
I was superb at everything, Steve.
You thought you were.
My problem was I was short-sighted. How they ever let me become a flag reader? Because...
Weren't you? Didn't you do semaphore as well? Weren't you a bit of a dab hand at semaphore?
No, I never learned.
Did you not learn it?
That's the one thing I regret. Never learned semaphore. So when I was on the Aurora, one of the petty officer signals, he was doing semaphore with a guy on one of the RFAs, the big tankers that used to go along with us for food and fuel. And I thought, we never learned that, and because obviously things are moving on, technology was changing. I assume they still do flashing light.
I don't know. I don't know whether they do or not. I've got no idea. I would have thought so. I'd have thought that there would still be some sort of need for it.
Yeah, because it stopped blaring out stuff on the radio, which people can listen into.
It is a very effective means of comms. I mean, it's truth. That's how we chatted when you were on a different ship.
Yes, we did, didn't we?
And unless the commissioned officers could actually read Morse, which most of them couldn't, they could pick up a little bit, some of them, but most of them couldn't. You could be spinning dits about all sorts of things to each other, and nobody would know.
That's the amazing thing about Hollywood movies, where they come up and they're doing Morse code and they go, da-da-da-da-da-da. What was it, officer? Well, he wants us to go to this, so.
Yeah. And you go, no, it wasn't. One of the things that I quite liked about the Inspector Morse series is the opening music for it.
Yes.
Which is obviously spells out Morse in Morse, which I thought was quite nice. Da 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 dit da dit 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 da 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 dit da dit 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 dit. That does actually say Morse. I thought very clever, very clever. I like the way you've done that.
One thing I remember about Mercury is I went on leave. I came back by bus. And the night before, I met up with a guy who I'd been to school with. And I got a cut on my heel. And unbeknown to me, as I was at the discotheque, obviously wowing people with my dance moves, it got infected. And next morning I woke up and it had ballooned out. And I could hardly walk, and I put my shoes on. This bubble had burst and it got worse and worse. And I somehow got back to East Meon, to HMS Mercury, and I was in agony. And I never told anyone. And, of course, then you're marching, got your boots on, and this thing was rubbing away for a while. Anyway, I had to turn around and go to the doctor. And they looked at it, and they suddenly scurried around, did certain things, and said, there was a black line going up your leg. If it got too further, you might have lost your leg.
Oh, gosh.
And I had to be immobilised in the ward. I forgot where it was. I know there was Quan's nurses there. But it was the week of my final exams. And they threatened to back class. Can you remember what that meant?
Yeah, I can remember.
You had to stay behind, didn't you?
Yeah, you got moved to the squad that were coming up behind you, basically.
You had to do it almost all over again. And I said, oh, crap. Well, on the day of the first exams, I got up on crutches and I walked out and I went over and did the exams. I think it was in the block where you had to do the typing. And if I remember, there's some steps going up.
Eagle block.
Of course you remember. I was in agony, and I sat down, and then there was another one, and I don't know if my memory's failing here. It was where you had to go with an officer. In front of you was like a mock-up of ships moving, and you had to do code to tell him where to move the ships and what direction we're going. Anyway, I did the exams, sat down over 2 days, and I was exhausted and literally collapsed. Well, when they had all been done and we were passing out, yay, you got to move on, there was the Kelly Award. I'd never heard of it. Go into this big auditorium, and then they said, right, we're going to give... for that intake, there must have been 2 or 3 a year. I don't think it's just the one of the year. And I'm asking you now, Steve, how many would there have been of us in any one intake?
20? 30?
Yeah, maybe about 20.
Okay. Well, unbeknownst to me, they called out the name of the person who won the Kelly Award, and you got this big picture of HMS Kelly, which was Louis Mountbatten's ship commanding World War II. Beautiful piece of artwork. And I won it because I'd got up and had walked over in great pain. It was a fitting point to my time at Mercury. And that's about all I remember.
They used to award that to the top qualifier on the training. I was the top qualifier on my training.
Did you get it?
And they said to me, you should be getting the Kelly Squadron Award. But because you're a junior, i.e. under the age of 18, and because your class leader has done such a good job being the class leader, we're going to actually award it to him. No hard feelings. And I thought to myself, what a bugger. I'd never won anything in my life. And I worked really hard and I was the top qualifier and I'd done really well and I didn't get the award.
That is a bummer.
It was a bit of a bummer. But I made it up later when I went back for professional training later on for leading rates and I won the Herbert Lott Award for...
The Herbert Lott?
Herbert Lott, L-O-T-T, Herbert Lott Award. And I beat the other chap by 0.5%. Which he never forgave me for. He never forgave me for beating him 0.5%.
Not with any competition.
Oh, mate, he was a shocker. Lovely guy, but he was so competitive with me because I managed to do quite well on the course, and so I got the award, and he was not happy. That was the award that you got, and you then get your name put up etched onto the board in Eagle Block as top qualifier, right. Herbert Lott Award, and all the rest of it. And I went back some months later, and I saw that they had not put my name up, they had actually put his name up. And so I went and had it out with them and said, that ain't right, guys. I was the top qualifier. You need to amend the board. So they took the board down, they put my name up instead.
Oh.
So they were a bit naughty. The fleet chief, the warrant officer, didn't like me. I think he must have counted things up about 50,000 times to see if he could dock me 0.5%, but he couldn't. So they ended up having to give it to me, which was nice. And in fact, Mark.
Oh, don't tell me you.
Here we go, Mark. With award was
what Steve is showing me is the award with stuff in it.
Oh, it's got loads of crap in it. I just use it to keep pens and stuff in. But there we go.
Oh, actually, just coming to my mind, when I was at Mercury, they paid you at a table. We had to go up in number ones, go over, doff your caps, salute, put out your left hand, and take a packet and then walk off, as though you're saying, "Thank you, sir, for paying me." It's like, oh.
That's right. You had to give the last 3 digits of your service number and the last letter of your service number, and you paid cash in hand. Whether that was just for the first week until they got the bank account sorted out, I don't know. But certainly marched up there, saluted, left hand out, money in hand, and off you trotted, and with your 6 shillings.
It was basically knuckling, wasn't it, to authority?
It's just horrendous when you think about it. But it was all good sport, my old mate.
And when did you find out your first ship?
I put in for a Portsmouth-based destroyer because that would have been closer to home for me. And so Draftee being Draftee gave me a Plymouth-based frigate. So in fact, the only thing that they could have done worse would send me up to Rosyth and do something like that. But no, so they sent me to Plymouth, and I can't remember when I found out that I was going to Plymouth. I was less than happy with it. If I looked in my diary, I'd be able to tell you, Mark, but I can't. I can't remember offhand when it was. But obviously, the prospect of joining it was not a happy one, because it was in the total wrong part of the country. It was a frigate and it wasn't a destroyer. And I was thinking, oh, fantastic! Thank you so much. It sort of set the scene, really.
For me, it was with a guy called Dell. We didn't join together, Raleigh, but because I was held behind for some reason, either he was waiting as well. We ended up in the same group, and we went to Mercury together, and we got sent to the first ship together. We found out at the same time. It was HMS Aurora, and we went, if I remember correctly, around about November of 1981. Big event, and when you get to the ship, I was actually told, everything you've learned, we're now going to have to unlearn to do something. So what was the point of that then?
I know.
But there you go.
It was all very different, wasn't it, when you actually did get into the ship? Very, very different. In fact, Mark, as I talked to you, I just opened my diary, and according to my regulating petty officer and FOPS, FOPS, fleet ops and fleet operations or something like that, that the ship I'm joining is heading down south. It's heading to the Falklands. Well, they couldn't have got it more wrong, because the day after I joined it, we went to the Gulf.
When you applied to go to a ship, a destroyer in Portsmouth, if you hadn't gone to Plymouth, fated Steve, we wouldn't have met.
We would never have met, would we?
That's why I had to go to Plymouth, mate.
That's it. That's what it was all about. It was all about meeting you, friend. That's what it was all about. All those years.
40-odd years ago now. Bloody hell.
Interesting times. There was lots of letter writing that went on at Mercury. Those funny things that you actually use ink on paper. Some telephone calls from telephone kiosks.
That's right.
Beep, 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 beep. More change. Beep, 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 beep. That's it.
And even if you put money in, it'd still cut you off.
Yeah, and it'd just drop out the bottom.
And it all smelled of piss.
The good old days.
We'll have to do a video of first time on the ships then.
Yeah, we'll pick up on that at some point. That was good. Very good, fella. Well, thanks for the chat. Good chat. And I'll catch up with you later on. Next time we're going well.
Sweet. Take care, mate.
Take care, buddy. Bye.